What's up, Dodger fans? Welcome into DodgerHeads presented by DodgerBlue.com. My name is Jeff Spiegel. I am joined as always by Daniel Starkand. And this is our weekly show breaking down the past week of Dodger baseball, looking ahead to an upcoming series with the Mariners and then another battle with the Padres. Needless to say, plenty to talk about today. We're going to kick things off in a moment, reflecting on the weekend in San Diego. We'll do stock up and stock down, big deal, no deal. We'll talk about the 36-hour trip to Seattle and then Padres round two. But we'll start, Daniel, with the biggest question. The Dodgers win 2 out of 3 in San Diego. They lose the finale on Sunday. You don't get to bring your broom, but give me your biggest reflections as you think back on what was really a hyped up series that somehow lived up to, and I would argue exceeded the hype.
Yeah. I was just gonna say I'm a little bummed I don't have my buddy, my little broom, sitting here next to me like after the playoffs last year. But hey, we'll take 2 out of 3. That's not bad at all. But my biggest takeaway is just that it was a really fun, close series. There was I feel like there was a lot of hype building up to it. And it was like, it's just an April series. Like, it's not a big deal either way, no matter what happens. But I thought we saw some really good baseball all weekend.
Yeah.
I think I saw somewhere that it was like in 26 of the 30 innings that were played, it was like a 1 or 2 run game. So, I mean, it was close the whole weekend.
Yeah.
But I'm just happy the Dodgers came away with 2 out of 3. That's huge right there, because I think you said this on a previous show. Like, these games basically count for double. Like, when we're looking at the division race, like, that's the team that's going to be chasing us. So anytime you can beat the Padres, that's good. Even if it is April, like those games are still going to matter in the standings, down the road.
Yeah, it is funny. I mean, I think as Dodger fans, we have this sort of big brother complex where it's like, oh, the Padres, who cares about the Padres? And you and I are going to talk in a moment about whether or not this qualifies as a rivalry or not. But I think Dodger fans were like, who cares? Whatever. Dave Roberts even said, I don't know if it's a rivalry. And then Dave Roberts goes and moves his pitching rotation around to get his 3 best starters for the weekend. And I think it was pretty obvious that this series meant something to the Dodgers. Obviously, we know the history is not long. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. But there is a little bit recent history. Last year, they meet in the NLDS. They're battling for the division. You've got some controversy with Santana, with Kershaw, with Profar, etc. So I'm with you. My headline here for the series is just excitement. I have these games circled on my calendar from here on out because I think there was a part of me that was like, let's see. Let's see if one team, do the Dodgers seem to not really care and the Padres care way more? Do the Dodgers wipe the floor with them and this isn't really a rivalry? But these were great games. We did a live post-game show at 12:15 a.m. on Saturday morning / Friday night. And I said that was the best regular season baseball game I've ever seen. I don't think that's hyperbole. Like, it was an unbelievable game because of the hype, because of the expectations. And then it was just back and forth. I think there were 4 blown leads. The game goes into extra innings. There's tons of guys stranded in runners in scoring position in the 10th and 11th. And so then you have the 12th where the Dodgers explode. You come back the next day, it's the exact opposite. It's 2 of the best pitchers in all of baseball doing exactly what they do. You have the huge Kershaw moment where he walks a run in with the bases loaded. The Dodgers win 2-0. So for me, excitement. I wrote down, like, it's as close as we've gotten. The best moments in baseball, regular season baseball for me, were probably 3 or 4 years ago when the Giants were really good and the Dodgers were kind of on their upswing. You had the Bumgarner stuff, the Puig stuff, that kind of thing. The difference here is I had disdain for the Giants. I couldn't stand them. Maybe it's just because I had Giant fans in my life that were the most annoying people in the world because they won a few World Series, and it's like they cared about baseball for those years, and now they're nowhere to be found. The difference is I don't find myself hating the Padres. I find myself just being able to enjoy the game without feeling like personal anguish after they lose. Maybe I'll eventually hate the Padres, but for now, I just get to kind of enjoy these as remarkable games.
Yeah, absolutely. And one other thing I wanted to highlight was just the pitching in this series. Like, we talk about how good both of these lineups are, and rightfully so. Like, it's 2 of the best lineups in baseball, filled with, stars in both of them. And for the most part, the pitching for both sides was able to neutralize them. Like, I think I saw, like, the starting pitchers in the series had like a combined 1.60 ERA, which is just insane. We expected good pitching. Like, when you just look at the names, like you already mentioned, the Dodgers lined up their best guys. The Padres had 2 of their best guys. But just to see them, see those guys go to work and pretty much all of them had good outings. And that, I think that played a big role in the games being so tightly contested. So I just wanted to highlight the pitching. Like, there's so many guys on both of these teams, in both the starters and the bullpens. Like, we saw I think that was like one of 4 games on Friday night since the new extra innings rule came into play to go all the way to the 12th. Like usually those are done, by the 10th or 11th because the guys are starting with runners on second base. Like, but we
Yeah.
saw the pitchers were able to get out of those jams. So, yeah, I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, and I want to ask you about the extra inning rule because that's been a topic of conversation on Twitter. But I want to give myself a small pat on the back. If you missed it, myself and a guy named Rob Morse, we have a weekly show that's going to be on this channel talking about previewing the weekend from a betting perspective. And the two things we liked on Friday that we hinted at liking all throughout the weekend were the under and the Dodgers money line. Now, the Dodgers money line, big shocker there, but the odds were great. It was only minus 125. Tonight against the Mariners, it's minus 200 for context. So if you bet the under and if you bet the money line, both of those hit 2 out of 3 games, you would have won yourself some money. I even threw out Dodgers 8-1 to have a shutout on Friday night. So if you felt frisky and bet that all weekend, you would have hit that on Saturday, got some 8-1. So hopefully that worked out for some folks, but we did like the under as well. But I'll throw out one more thing. No Bellinger for the whole series. So the Dodgers were not at full
Yeah.
strength. The Padres, obviously, who knows? They're missing some guys as well on the pitching side of things. But I do want to talk about the extra inning thing. So Friday night, it goes to extra innings, and all of baseball Twitter erupts with disdain for the extra inning rule. And I don't know if you and I have talked about this. If we have, I'm not sure where you land. I'll be honest. I like the extra inning rule. Like, there's nothing I would have liked. I mean, that was a great game, so maybe that's the exception, but I've been
Yeah.
at like the 1 a.m. It's the 16th inning, and I hate myself because I refuse to turn this game off, and nothing's happening. And it's like Dennis Santana's pitching; he's throwing his 87th pitch in the 14th inning. Like, to me, that I don't enjoy that. In the regular season, I'm like, just make this thing exciting. And I thought the rule did exactly what it was supposed to do. There's a guy on second, nobody scores in the 10th, nobody scores in the 11th, but every at bat in both of those innings was absolutely jam packed with excitement and pressure because for 6 consecutive batters, basically, a hit wins the game. Nobody could do it. And then, like you said, the game ends in the 12th inning. Totally reasonable to me. Manageable, not too late, etc. So I know I'm in the minority here. I kind of like the rule, or maybe I should say I don't hate the rule, simply because what I like the least is an 18 inning game that's just boring for the last 6.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not gonna say I like the rule, but I'm pretty indifferent about it, and I definitely see both sides. Like, luckily, the Friday night game didn't kind of end in like a fluky, like,
Yeah.
runner on second base, bunt him over, sack fly away. It's like, oh, that kind of stinks. Like, luckily, the Dodgers kind of put an exclamation mark on it and made sure that they were the team that deserved to win. But I'm with you. Like, in the regular season, I don't need to be watching 18 innings of baseball until 2 a.m.
Yeah.
Like, that just seems kind of ridiculous. And I think it's also good. Like, we don't need to be wearing out our pitchers in
Yeah.
April here. Like, we saw both teams were pretty much almost out of pitchers. Like, at the end of 12, like, I could only imagine if that game goes 18, like, who's pitching by the end of it.
Yeah.
Like, I also think that's kind of a fluky way to end. Like, we saw a couple years ago, the Dodgers lost the game in extras to the Phillies because they had to pitch Kike Hernandez just because they were out of pitching. Like, that's just as
Yeah.
fluky as the runner on second base. So I'm with you for the regular season. I would never want that in any sort of postseason meaningful game like that. Let's just play real baseball. But I don't mind it for the regular season. Like, we play 162 of those things. Like, I don't need to be staying up for
Yeah.
6-7 hours to watch an 18 inning game.
Well, and I think the health of relievers is an important thing. We're going to talk a little bit about some decisions the Dodgers made on Sunday. Clearly, there's a lot of guys going down with injuries. There are teams that are playing it incredibly cautious when it comes to their bullpens, and so I'm with you. I mean, if that Friday night game had kept going and going and going, who knows what would have happened? I mean, literally, the Padres had no more. They had one reliever left in the bullpen. It was a guy who had thrown 3 innings the night before, so he was off limits. They ended the game with a position player pitching and a starting
Yeah.
pitcher in left field. The Dodgers had Jimmy Nelson and Scott Alexander both in reserve, so the Dodgers were in much better condition if that game continued to go. But it wasn't great for either team as far as the bullpen goes. So let me ask the question that I think has been simmering beneath the surface then when it comes to Dodgers Padres. Is this a rivalry? Is this a rivalry? Now, as I've had this conversation with Dodger fans, the definition of rivalry eludes. There is no standardized definition. So I did what I would expect myself to do, which is type into Google, what is a rivalry? And then realize I need to clarify, what is a sports rivalry? Daniel, our friends at Harvard have defined this for us.
Smart, very smart people over at
You're
Harvard.
going to know they're smart because of the first two of the first three words in this definition, okay? But here's a sports rivalry. Quote, a fluctuating adversarial relationship between two teams, players, or groups of fans gaining significance through on-field competition, on or off-field incidences, proximity, demographic makeup, and or historical occurrences. Fluctuating adversarial relationship is one heck of a quote for something that's talking about sports, but I do think the definition's helpful because it gives you kind of 5 markers at the end of there. On-field competition, on or off infield incidences, proximity, demographic makeup, historical occurrences. So for me, I go down this checklist. I say, is there on high level on-field competition? Check. Is there on or off-field incidences? Check. Is there proximity? I'm taking this geographically. Check. Is there a demographic makeup? I don't think that one qualifies. I don't think there's like some sort of demographic that, I did laugh. The New York Times had an article referring to the Dodgers as blue bloods and the Padres as blue collar. I don't know what in the world qualifies the Padres as blue collar, but I don't think there's a demographic makeup. Historical occurrences, this is where most people get mad. I would also say no. I don't think there's history there. So all of that said, for me, I think this is a rivalry. I consider the Padres the biggest rival the Dodgers have simply because they're the second best team in the league. They play in the same division. There is a big brother, little brother, Southern California thing going on. And we have seen the heated stuff on field. We had Trent Grisham pimping a home run against Kershaw. We had him catching the ball and throwing it over the bullpen wall. We had Machado screaming at Gratterall after Tatis gets robbed of a home run in the NLDS. We have Dennis Santana, I think, trying to start a fight for no reason. We have Kershaw screaming, maybe the first time I've seen him curse on national television, screaming at Jurickson Profar. So for me, I say yes, this is a rivalry. What do you say?
Yeah, well, let me just start by saying that even before this season, even before this series, me and you both said that this was a rivalry. I forgot what offseason show it was, but I think we got some slack for that. Like a lot of Dodger fans didn't agree with us. So me and you are both in the camp that this is a rivalry. I mean, if you look across baseball, like even fans that aren't Dodgers and Padres fans, like everyone watched this series.
Yeah.
It's the series this season. Like I don't know what else would interest me. Like it's not even like Yankees Red Sox isn't even really interesting anymore. So I'm with you. I'd say this is a rivalry. I will say by the Harvard definition, there's a couple words in there like fluctuating and some other stuff that maybe would say it's not a rivalry just because the Padres haven't beat the Dodgers in a series since who knows when.
Yeah.
With that being said, though, all the games are close games. It's not like the Dodgers are just coming and beating the brakes off them. Like, I think it's pretty clear that these two teams don't like each other.
Yeah.
You mentioned all the incidents that have happened, and they're arguably the two best teams in baseball. Like, no. You also mentioned about how rivalries are like long-term type deals. This isn't a long-term rivalry like the Giants, but I think right now it absolutely is, and who knows for years to come. Like both of these organizations are going to be really good for a long time here. They both have current major league talent and they both have really good farm systems as well. So I think this is kind of the start of a rivalry. Like I think 5-10 years down the road, I don't think there's going to be any doubt once we see these guys match up all those times. But yeah, I definitely think you have to say it is, and I definitely think that everyone in the baseball world is going to be paying more attention to these series, like as the season goes on, compared to basically any other two teams in baseball.
Yeah, and I think you look at like Tatis is signed forever, Machado is signed forever, the pitching staff that the Padres have coming up. You look at the Dodgers side of things as well. I mean, the guys like Mookie Betts that they have locked down, Will Smith, that you just pencil in. These guys, some combination of Buehler, Seager, Bellinger, Kershaw might be back, Bauer for a couple of years. Etc. So a bunch of the guys that are going to be there, and the expectation is both of these teams will be really good. I think the one thing that maybe that I question when I use the term rivalry is I just compare it to the way I feel about the Giants. I hinted at this earlier. I despise the Giants. I want nothing good for them. Nothing good. I don't find myself despising the Padres. I don't find myself caring what the Padres do in games that the Dodgers are not playing them in. The only other team that I think qualifies in some sense would be the Astros, just because of all of the bad blood between those two organizations. They are closer to the Giants. I just despise the organization. I want nothing good to come of them. Whereas the Padres is just different because it's not a despising of them. It's just a high level of competition of them. I don't know if that makes any sense or resonates with how you feel.
Yeah, it does, and I think the reason for that is what I just mentioned, just the fact that the
Yeah.
Padres haven't really beat the Dodgers in
Yeah.
anything. Like, they're just that little brother who keeps like punching you, but you know, at the end of the day, like you could knock him out in one punch if you really want to. But who knows? Like maybe one day that little brother will grow up and be even bigger than you, and then you can't do that
Yeah.
anymore. So I think maybe we'll have a little more disdain once the Padres start winning some series against the Dodgers. Maybe you know, I hope this doesn't happen, but let's say they beat them in a postseason
Yeah.
series. Like I have a feeling our feelings will change towards that team. But I'm with you right now. Like I don't hate the Padres at all. I enjoy watching these games. They actually have some players that I actually like.
Yeah.
Like Tatis, I'm a Tatis fan. Like I know he didn't have the best series, but you gotta love the way that guy plays. Like he's always out there hustling and just his athleticism. Like specifically that play with Turner at third base where he came off and they called him out, but the replay
Yeah.
showed he was safe. Like just the flexibility to do that. Like there's only a handful of
Yeah.
players. He kind of reminds me of Mookie in that sense. Like that guy could just do things on a baseball field that 99.99% of other players can't. So I enjoy watching the Padres. I'm looking forward to more games between these teams. But I think that disdain will come from
Yeah.
the Padres winning more if that ever happens. Who knows?
Yeah, and I
Maybe
think
not.
one category that maybe didn't get mentioned is just sort of the iconic moments. Like I feel like this rivalry that we're gonna call it already has a bunch of them, right? Like the Bellinger
Yeah.
robbing Tatis and Gratterall blowing kisses and both teams screaming. I mean, that's an iconic moment that every. I mean, there are some Dodger fans who would say that was the most memorable moment of the entire postseason run in which they won a World Series. And you have little things like Mookie Betts' diving catch in game 2 of this series that we just watched, and he gets up and he's pounding his chest. I mean, there's some of those moments, right? Kershaw getting heated with Profar. These are just the types of things that feel seared into my memory as far as just memorable moments, which is unique for the yes, the Dodgers and Padres have played probably like 15 very, very, very meaningful games in the past, 6 to 9 months, right? And yet, how many of those games felt big and had sort of classic, memorable moments? It feels like a lot of them. It feels like a higher
Yeah.
proportion of them, and so definitely something to monitor. And like you said, part of this is us banking on the fact that this is going to be a heated competition for the next 3, 5, 10 years. I do
Yeah.
think the Giants, we're probably a few years away, but I like Farhan Zaidi. I think he's going to get that thing figured out. And so once that happens, I think it'll be interesting when you have the Giants and the Padres potentially both
Yeah.
competitive. And we'll talk. Maybe some people think the Giants are competitive now. They are in second place in the division, tied with the Padres. We'll talk about them in a moment, but definitely something to keep an eye on. I know some people are. I've got friends that are very resistant to calling this a rivalry. Not enough
Yeah.
history. Yada yada yada. I hear them. I don't think it's open and shut, but I do think there's a lot there. So let's move along. We'll do a quick week in review, and then we'll do stock up and stock down. Catching you up on everything that happened the past week. We talked a lot about the Padres. The Dodgers did play the Rockies before that. They swept the Nationals last weekend. Then they sweep the Rockies. Trevor Bauer dominates on Tuesday. The Dodgers win 7-0. We had the Justin Turner Nacho home run on Wednesday, which we're going to see about 7,000 highlights of, I think, this season. The Dodgers win
Yeah.
that one 4-2. And then Thursday was probably the best game of the bunch. Max Muncy has a 7th-inning 3-run home run right after I tweeted he's due for the record. So I do want to – I go 1 for 100 on the he's due tweets. But when I get it right, I want to make sure we see that. So Muncy gets that, which is a great one. And then the Padres, obviously. The 11-6 thriller in 12 innings on Friday. The pitchers duel, 2-0. Clayton Kershaw game-winning RBI. And then Sunday, the Dodgers lose 5-2. So with that in mind, let's move to a segment we do every week, stock up, stock down. Who are guys that have had good weeks? Who are guys that have had bad weeks? Obviously, we're so early in the season. Some of this is still just the first few weeks of the season, Daniel, but I'll turn to you first. Stock up or stock down? Who had themselves a good or a bad week in your mind?
Yeah, my first stock up, I'm gonna go with Zach McKinstry, and it's just because like this kid just keeps doing it. Like
Yeah.
I think we all expect him to cool off a little bit at some point, but it hasn't happened yet, and he's just been huge. You already mentioned how the Dodgers didn't have Bellinger this series. They also didn't have Gavin Lux. AJ Pollock was pretty much not able to play. Like he played one game, I think, and maybe came in for an inning or two in another game. The Dodgers, position player wise, they're pretty short-handed right now, dealing with a lot of bumps and bruises. And Zach McKinstry's just been huge,
Yeah.
during this time. He's he's been able to step in at multiple positions, and he's come up big at the plate. I tweeted yesterday after the Dodgers lost, like, if there's anything we learned from this game, it's that we can't afford to have our best player out of the lineup anymore, with a gif of Zach McKinstry. So he came in yesterday off the bench and had one at bat, singled up the middle, of course. So I just wanted to highlight everything this kid's doing.
Yeah.
I love it. He's just a winning player.
He's the fourth most valuable player according to WAR on the Dodgers right now, behind Kershaw, Turner, and Muncy. He's got a 970 OPS with 3 home runs. You and I were on it early.
Yeah.
I thought he was going to be an upgrade over Kike. He has been an upgrade. Obviously, defensively, he's not 100% there, but he's close enough, and he's much better defensively. I'll go with the most obvious stock up one out there, probably so obvious that people are forgetting about it. It's David Price. His first 2 appearances, April 2nd and April 5th, 3 2/3, 5 earned runs, 11 base runners. He allowed 11 base runners in 3.2 innings, only 2 strikeouts. He gets a week off. He comes back. He pitches 3 times this week on the 13th, the 15th, and the 16th. And here was his line: 4 innings pitched, no earned runs, 3 base runners, 8 strikeouts. Obviously, a pair of saves for David Price. He was fantastic for the Dodgers. I guess it was a win. It was a save and a win, right? He got the win, and maybe in that 12-inning game. So a save and a win, but he's been fantastic. And I give him grace for the first 2. It's a guy who hadn't pitched in the majors since 2019. Obviously a little bit rusty. It's hard to argue with what we saw. He's starting to figure something out as a reliever. Remember, he's getting used to that routine of not knowing if he's going to pitch, getting up, having to get warm really quickly. So 4 innings pitched, 8 strikeouts, no earned runs for David Price. Definitely stock up there.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. David Price, just such an impressive week. Specifically that Friday night outing, like he sat on the bench for 4 or 5 hours, whatever it was, and then comes in and just looks as dominant as ever. Like, he was untouchable that game. He was spotting his pitches perfectly. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing more of David Price, kind of seeing what role he goes into. I would still assume, like, since Gonsolin's hurt, like, let's say someone goes down in the rotation, I still think he would be the guy to move in if that were to happen. And I'm honestly kind of excited. Like, if that were to happen, I want to see him start some games. I still think he could do that. Like, that outing Friday, he pitched two great innings, and that, the way his stuff looked that night, like, he probably could have pitched 7 great innings, like, if it was a start. So I'm looking forward to seeing more of David Price. I'm happy he's kind of gotten out of that early season, slump, or whatever you want to call it. Like, I'm with you. He hadn't pitched in so long. Like, you can't really fault him for that. And also, it's a completely new role coming out of the bullpen. So yeah, but very happy with David Price, and I think he's going to be just a huge weapon for this team moving forward.
Yeah. Number 2 on your list is who?
Number 2 on my list is another guy similar to McKinstry, who's filled in well for guys who we didn't really expect that to happen, and it's Luke Raley. He was called up a week ago. None of us really knew much about him. We do now. We saw him absolutely launch a ball on Friday. That was the hardest hit ball of the Dodgers season, I'm pretty sure. Big home run there. He had a couple other hits. He broke up Darvish's no-hitter the other day. So Luke Raley, he's just been similar to McKinstry. Like, the team hasn't skipped a beat, even though they've been dealing with all these injuries. So credit to him. And he's earned himself more looks, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, something we've talked about for a long time, wondered about, is Matt Beatty and what his role was. Well, Matt Beatty got optioned in order to make room for some extra pitchers on Sunday. So it's very clear where Luke Raley stands in the pecking order and where Matt Beatty stands, which if you're Luke Raley, is a positive thing for you. Next up for me in stock up, I'll throw a couple starting pitchers out there. Again, it's a weird one in stock up because you have high expectations, but Clayton Kershaw and Trevor Bauer have been fantastic. Kershaw, 3rd in the majors in WAR among starting pitchers since getting shelled on opening day. 19 innings pitched, 1 earned run, 11 hits, 2 walks, and 22 strikeouts. So he's striking out more than a batter an inning, just 1 earned run in his last 19. And that includes starts against the Nationals and the Padres, a couple really good offensive teams in big moments. Bauer, on the other hand, if you take away the 4 earned runs he allowed at the end of that first start in Coors Field, where he took a no-hitter into the 7th and then ended up with 4 earned runs, if you take those out, he's gone 26 innings with just 3 earned runs and 10 hits allowed, 6 walks, 36 strikeouts in 26 innings. I know there were some Dodger fans skeptical about Bauer. Which one are we going to get? Blah, blah, blah. He hasn't, obviously the earned runs, 7 earned runs in 26 innings is not amazing. It's not Cy Young level yet, but 36 strikeouts in 26 innings. He's giving them length, which We're seeing how important that has been. Not afraid of the big moments at all. Pitched really well in a couple of big moments. So hard to argue with what you're getting out of Bauer. Have to love that if you're a Dodger fan, I think. So credit to Kershaw and Bauer both having fantastic, I would say maybe 2 week stretches here for the Dodgers.
Yeah, they've both been dominant. I feel like Clayton Kershaw has become underrated
Yeah.
at this point. Like, for some reason, everyone just decided to start taking him out of the best pitcher in baseball conversation, even though his numbers have never been worthy of that.
Yeah.
So he's still right there. He's still as great as ever. So that's been fun to watch. And yeah, Bauer's been everything we'd hoped he'd be. He's been worth every penny to this point. The only thing is he still has to figure out how to get Manny Machado out.
Yeah, no
Machado
kidding.
again went 2 for 2 against him, and I don't know what the exact numbers are, but he absolutely wears him out. And that's someone he's gonna face a lot more down the line. So hopefully he could kind of get that figured out. But other than that, no one else could hit the guys. So
Yeah.
he's been incredible. And like you said, that length is so important. I honestly, he got taken out after 6 yesterday, and I thought maybe he had one more in him. I understood, why they took him out with Machado leading off the next inning, but I thought he maybe had one more inning in him, and he's never been afraid to throw, more pitches, more innings. So I think that's something we're going to see more as the season goes along. But yeah, the Dodgers starting pitching as a whole has been everything we'd hoped it'd be. We knew they had a great rotation coming into the year, but to this point, they've pretty much every guy has been awesome, and it's just exciting stuff.
Well, in the Bauer decision, we're going to talk a little bit about that decision in a moment when we get to Dennis Santana and some quotes that Dave Roberts made. But I think when you hear the quote, it makes the decision to take Bauer out, I think, even more interesting. So we'll talk about that in a minute. Last one for you, stock up or stock down?
My last stock down, I have one stock down, and it's the guy you just mentioned, Dennis Santana. We talked on the post-game show about the scuffle thing. Now that I watched it back, I'm kind of with you. It was pretty unnecessary, but if that's what it took to pump him up, so be it. But just more so on his overall pitching, like wasn't too impressed with what I saw this weekend, to be honest. Like, yes, he got out of a big jam on Friday night, but he was in a big jam because he was just kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
Like, he's hitting guys, he's walking guys. He couldn't command his fastball at all whatsoever. And then he comes back on Sunday in another big spot, and it's pretty much the same thing, like walking guys, giving up hits. So I mean, I never thought, Dennis Santana would be a high leverage guy, and he was kind of forced into that role. Like, one game was extra innings, and then, the bullpen's a little taxed at the end of the weekend. So they probably tried to get too much out of him. But with that being said, those were big opportunities for him, and he was only able to come through in one of the two. So I think he's kind of low on the pecking order in the bullpen, as we kind of originally thought. But who knows? It's still early in the season.
Yeah, it's one of those things where sometimes I think we overreact to he gets the strikeout of Tatis, and you're like, which you can overreact to, like, oh, that was a success, right? At the end of the day, overall, it was success, and you forget about kind of everything that led up to that. Which even the Tatis strikeout, I mean, I don't think anyone could argue that pitch he struck him out on was a great pitch. He freaking hung a breaking ball that just apparently, I don't know what Tatis was looking for. He just watched a breaking ball
fastball, I guess,
high in the middle of the zone. I mean, like, a terrible pitch. That's a pitch Tatis hits out of the park. But so I think sometimes you forget about what led to that point. He hits the guy. He had a walk, I believe. I mean, it was just kind of a mess. And yet he gets out of it. You and I have been pro Dennis Santana, throughout. I still think there's something there. I liked a little bit of the fire that it felt like he had. It wasn't like calm, cool, collected, but it was like intense, which I think is good for the Dodgers. And good in that moment. I like it from a rivalry perspective, etc. But there was also a moment afterwards where Mark Pryor was like, calm down. I mean, he's literally like pushing his hands down, rubbing him on the shoulder. Like, it was like, take a deep breath. So I thought it was big for him that they go back to him on Sunday. They trusted him. They showed him that moment. Obviously, things didn't work out very well. Whether he got put into a situation that he probably shouldn't have been put in is fair to ask. But yeah, I'm with you. It wasn't perfect. I think, if he comes out of Sunday with a positive result, we're talking about a guy like, oh man, could this be a leverage asset sort of moving forward? On the flip side, he's probably right about where he was to begin the season, which was on the outside looking in when the Dodger bullpen is healthy. The last one for me, stock down, AJ Pollock, just not having a great year so far. This is a guy who had a really good season last year. in a shortened year, and then his comeback. He's got a 233 batting average, 283 on base percentage. And if you thought the 283 on base percentage, he's got a 279 slugging percentage. So that's in 46 plate appearances. He's striking out 30.4% of the time. Brutal for AJ Pollock. Defensively, we know he's not the biggest asset in the world. I mean, maybe compared to a guy like Rayleigh, he's probably out on par, but McKinstry seems to be better defensively out there. Obviously, Chris Taylor is much better defensively out there. So, kind of a bummer. Pollock was a guy that I think can really lengthen the Dodgers lineup if he's hitting to the level, and he's been really bad this season.
Yeah, and he's dealt with a minor injury as well over this past weekend. But yeah, he hasn't been great. Still early. We're not gonna panic or
No.
anything, but let's hope he could be better. And I just one other quick stock down for me. I just want to say overall, the Dodgers defense as a whole has just not been up to standard this season. Mookie made that great catch to save a game, so in that instance, the defense was great. But other than that, a lot of mistakes. Seager's made some errors. Justin Turner's made some errors. And some of those proved costly. Like I think we saw in the game yesterday, the Padres' big rally, it all started with Seager making an error on a pretty routine play. So who knows? Maybe the Dodgers come away with a 2-1 win if that doesn't happen. Scott Alexander was pitching well to that point. So yeah, I think it's not something to be too concerned about long term, but I'd like to see the Dodgers tighten it up a little on defense.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, I mean, Santana, we give him kind of a bad rap there a little bit. And I believe, I can't remember if he or Alexander was on the mound, but I think.
Yeah, it was Alexander, and he came in after.
So, yeah.
But,
so
I mean, he inherited the base runner.
Got it. Okay. So there is a world in which Santana comes in with an extra out and maybe Alexander there. So, anyways.
Right.
Okay, well, let's move on to Big Deal, No Deal. Again, for those that are new and joining us, we appreciate you joining us. Basically, it's a segment where we talk about quotes or things that have happened in the past week and say, are we overreacting to this or not, or underreacting to this? Is this a big deal or not? And we'll start with the headline. I was tweeting on Sunday as I was kind of tracking along with the game. Why is Dennis Santana the guy here in the 8th inning? It's a big moment. I joked, this is a guy who went from not on the opening day roster to bringing in to face Tatis in a big moment. Of course, it doesn't go perfectly as expected. And I was just confused. It was like the Dodgers had basically rested everybody the day before. Jansen was available. Knebel was available. I mean, Trinan was not. Nelson had already pitched. Alexander had already pitched. But aside from that, and Gonzalez was not available either. But you had Jansen and Knebel, who are your two best, guys. You had a lead late in the game against the Padres. Robert says afterwards, the health of our big-time options, I assume talking about Knebel and Jansen, was more important. That's why he opted with Santana in the 8th. No need to overwork guys in April. Big deal or no deal to you that we're in April in seemingly a significant, as significant of a regular season series as the Dodgers are going to see. They have 2 games in Seattle and then an off day. Big deal or no deal to you that the Dodgers basically let one get away at the sort of in order to prefer rest?
Yeah, I think it's a big deal in the sense of this series. Like, I think it directly impacted the results of the series. Like, maybe you just mentioned Knebel and Jansen, who hadn't pitched on Saturday, but again, weren't available on Sunday. Like, maybe if those guys pitched, the Dodgers win 2-1 and come out with a sweep, and we're all super happy right now instead of just being a little happy. But I think in the grand scheme of things, it's not a huge deal, and I kind of agree with it, honestly. Like, yes, this was a big series. Yes, you want to get as many wins against the Padres as possible, but it can't come at the cost of long-term health for important players. And I think we saw that's how the Dodgers treated the series, the whole way. Like, yes, they did rearrange their rotation to get their best guys, but those guys are healthy, why not do that? We saw any guy who was dealing with like a nagging injury or whatever, like they didn't play. Like we didn't see Gavin Lux this series. We did not see Cody Bellinger. We saw very minimal, innings from the bullpen. So I think it's the right thing to do. We got 162 of these games. We can't afford to be losing key guys going for wins in April.
Yeah.
And I think, on the other side of things, we saw the Padres, treat it the exact opposite, right? Like they rushed Tatis back and I mean, he didn't get injured or anything. So we can't say whether that was a good or bad idea, but who knows? That's the face of your franchise. I don't know if you want to be risking, a long-term shoulder deal for a series in April. And we saw, Manny Machado was visibly in pain, didn't come out of the game, still started all the games. So I think we saw the Padres kind of treated this more like a must-win type of series, whereas the Dodgers were just like, whoever's healthy we'll go with, and if we win, we win. If we don't, we don't. Cool. So I guess, it's kind of a big deal, kind of not, but I'm glad. I think long term is more important than short term for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I'm usually critical of Dave Roberts. I was critical on Twitter. This is the only possible post game answer that he could have given that would have gotten agreement from me. If this is the reason, as long as it wasn't, oh, we were saving those guys for another moment. We'd like the matchup there. Like, as long as he doesn't say any of that, I'm okay with it. I would have liked to win the game. Obviously, it's hard to sort of accept the fact that you just sort of were willing to let this one get away from you. On the flip side, I get it. We're seeing guys go down with injuries. You don't want to overwork Knable or Jansen. So even if they had some rest, etc. Obviously, the series that they've got starting today on Monday against the Mariners, they play a 7-10 game, then a 1-10 game tomorrow. So it's a quick turnaround there. They've got a long travel day. They do have the day off Wednesday, and then you got 4 more with the
Or
Padres.
more.
So
Yep.
I understand kind of the overall sense, and I can get on board with that.
And
Next,
especially with someone like Knable, like
yeah,
he's dealt with a ton of
yeah,
injuries in
it's a
the
good point.
past. He had Tommy John. He basically hadn't pitched in a couple years, so that's a guy you want to be careful with for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I know this next one is a sensitive topic for you, Daniel. But big deal or no deal, talking about umpires, strike zones, a complete disaster of a strike zone all weekend. And I don't think either of us are going to sit here and say that the Dodgers were unfairly dealt with. I think it
Yeah.
was both directions. I mean, you got 2 inches off the plate to strike sometimes, 2 inches above the zone, 2 inches under the zone. I have no idea what the strike zone was. You weren't getting the inside corner, but everything else was fair game some of the time. So big deal or no deal, how bad the strike zones have been.
Yeah, I think it's a huge deal, honestly, because it's just horrible to watch.
Yeah,
Like, and I feel even worse for the players who are standing at the plate, and one time, a pitch on the corner is called a ball, and then one
yeah.
on the same corner but 4 inches outside is called a strike. So I just think it's ridiculous. MLB needs to address this. Like, I don't know if these umpires go back and watch the games and see how many mistakes they're making,
Yeah.
but I feel like it's just been insanely egregious this season, even compared to years past where it was already bad. Like, it's just been way worse this year. I don't know where you fall on the team robot ump or not. But for me, I think we're at the point where we almost have to go to that just because these umpires are way too inconsistent. You have no clue what's a strike, and that's just not fun for anyone. Like you said, it wasn't a case of, oh, the Dodgers got hosed. Like, it was both ways.
Yeah.
Like, the Dodgers got definitely benefited from some calls they probably shouldn't have gotten, and same for the Padres. It was just ridiculous all over the place, and it wasn't just one umpire either. It was pretty much every guy that was back there. So
Yeah.
I think it's a serious problem that MLB needs to address. I know nothing's going to happen this season, obviously, but it's just not fun to watch for anyone.
I'm definitely on multiple text threads where the robot emoji gets sent consistently throughout Dodger games. It didn't help. The Dodgers had the exact same crew both for the Rocky series and
Yeah,
the Padres series. So maybe we just dealt with the very worst crew in
the worst
baseball
crew.
and just got them for 7 straight games. Who knows? But
Yeah,
yeah, I'm with you. I have no opposite. I'm not opposed to the robot ump thing. I remember there was an at bat where Justin Turner got called out for strike 3 on a pitch that was, an inch and a half outside.
yeah,
And you think about, he's looking back at the umpire like, what am I supposed to do? Like, when I step into the batter's box, there's so many things I have to deal with. The one thing I have to be able to assume is that the strike zone is the strike zone. Like, I have
yeah,
to be able to assume that with 2 strikes, when a guy misses his spot outside, that you're not going to call it a strike. And as soon as that assumption is torn to shreds, it's a helpless feeling. And the same goes for the pitchers. The pitcher makes a pitch, and maybe it's an inch outside, but he gets a call for a strike. He's like, all right, 3-2 count. I'm going to go right back there. And now it's a
yep,
ball. It's like, I have to assume that that's not going to change. And neither side can. Again, I'm grateful that it wasn't egregious to one team or the other. I mean, I'm sure there are
yeah,
Dodger fans and Padre fans who feel like
yeah,
they personally got screwed. I just felt like it was equally bad, but maybe even more so with the Dodgers and Padres. These are 2 teams that like to work the count, that like to draw walks. And so for guys like Max Muncy and Justin Turner, an inconsistent strike zone is an absolute nightmare because you're trying to take borderline pitches. Like the whole series could have swung. Clayton Kershaw took ball 4 outside with the bases loaded
yeah.
against Yu Darvish. That pitch was 50-50. Should it have ever been called a strike? No, but throughout the series,
No,
it was 50-50. It was just a tad
yeah.
outside. Heck of a take from Kershaw. Maybe he's taking all the way there. I'm not sure. But yeah, so I'm with you. This is a big deal. Definitely something to monitor. And I think as Dodger fans, they didn't get screwed this time. But again, I just go back to the Dodgers know the strike zone better than any team in all of baseball. They work the strike zone better than any team in all of baseball. And so they need to be able to count on that from a defensive perspective. Offensively, if they're getting extra strikes, or I mean defensive, pitching wise, if they're getting extra strikes, it's a wrap. I mean, if you give Kershaw and Bauer and Buehler an extra 2 inches on the outside, like forget about it. You have no chance. So definitely a big deal there for me. Next one, Dodgers. 3.5 game lead in the division already. Giants 9-6 are in second. Are either of those stats a big deal to you? It was 4.5 games before yesterday, but 3.5 game division lead here on April 19th with the Giants at 9-6. Any big deal in there for you?
I mean, I think the Dodgers having that big of a division lead already, like the season just started, I think that's a big deal. Like, I mean, we kind of expected it to be kind of closer, I'd say, like compared to
Yeah.
years past. I feel like the Dodgers typically run away with the division basically every year, but we thought maybe, hey, this Padres got a good team. Maybe it's going to be close. And here we are, April 19th, the Dodgers already have, a 3.5 game cushion. That's huge. And I only expect that to grow larger. Like,
Yeah.
as good as the Giants have played, they got a nice little record there, but I'm not expecting them to, be a threat all year long. No offense, of course.
Yeah.
um, but I do like what Farhan's doing there, so I'll give them a little credit. Like Alex Wood, a guy who we know and loved, he had a great outing yesterday. I thought that was a good signing for the Giants. They haven't made like any big splashes or anything since Farhan got there, but I think they've made a lot of good under the radar type signings that don't make a huge difference now, but maybe down the road once they have a better roster, like as we see with the Dodgers,
Yeah.
those under the radar type signings could end up being a huge deal. So I like what the Giants are doing. I don't think they're a huge threat this year. But hey, I mean, anytime you could get another rivalry going, it could maybe add some more excitement. The Dodgers, I don't think they play the Giants until like the end of May, so we'll
Yeah.
see. We'll see where they're at by then.
Yeah. Okay, next one on here. This goes back to the Padres. I don't know if you saw Blake Snell's post-game comment yesterday complaining about how big of a divot Trevor Bauer allegedly was leaving. I assume he was talking about up against the rubber and not where the landing foot lands. But you're a former pitcher. Big deal or no deal. Trevor Bauer quote tweets it and is like, hey, that's where your toe goes, bro. But big deal or no deal, you got Blake Snell and Trevor Bauer going back and forth about the hole at the rubber.
Yeah. As you said, as a former pitcher, I tweeted, I totally understand Blake Snell's frustration there. I don't know. Bauer is apparently saying he created the hole, so I don't know who created the hole. But anytime there's a big hole on the mound there, it's definitely not fun. It hurts your foot. You can't really plant as well as you'd like to. I'm kind of the guy, I like to kind of just level. Like, so I wasn't like some pitchers go in there right away and are digging a hole immediately. Yeah. I was not one of those, and I hated when guys did that. With that being said, though, Blake Snell, you're in the major leagues. Like anytime you have a problem with a hole on the mound, you're free to let the umpire know, and they'll bring the grounds crew out and fix it for you. Like I feel like that's something you should know as when you've been in the show this long. Like so, if it's really that big of a problem, that could certainly be addressed.
Yeah. It just cracked me up. I mean, I love it. I love the back and forth. There was no Bauer involved in the on-field stuff, so he got involved late via social media. So Blake Snell definitely high on the list of Padres that are not my favorite players for sure as this thing goes along. A couple other ones here. Scott Alexander touching 96 miles an hour yesterday. Big deal or no deal to you?
Yeah, that was pretty impressive. I couldn't even tell you what Alexander's stats look like at the moment, but to me, he's looked pretty good this year. We weren't sure if he was going to make the roster or not. He ended up getting, the last spot. And to this point, I think he's pitched pretty well. I mean, he's not, I'm not saying he's a high leverage guy now or anything. Like, I'm not saying he's a setup guy or a closer, but I think he's given the Dodgers quality, outs to this point. He's a guy he's not great. He's not horrible. I'm sure in a lot of other bullpens, he'd have a bigger role. Like we're seeing Dylan Floro is now the closer in Miami, whereas
Yimi Garcia is the closer in Miami. Easy
I
there,
thought
Daniel.
Dylan Floro had a save opportunity the other day. So either way, he's either the setup guy or closer in Miami, whereas on the Dodgers, he was basically the last guy along with Alexander. So 96 is impressive. He's not a strikeout type pitcher. He's a ground ball, sinker ball guy. But anytime you could get up to 96, that's only going to help you.
Well, and your point with the Marlins is hilarious because it's two former Dodgers competing for the closer position there in Garcia and Floro. So Alexander on the year, 3.38 ERA in 6 appearances, although FIP says that he's been pretty fortunate there. So take it with a grain of salt. Last one here. Big deal or no deal that the under has hit in 6 consecutive Austin Barnes starts for the Dodgers. Big deal or no deal for you?
Yeah, you pointed that out the other day, and I just couldn't help but laugh.
It's my favorite stat.
Some of that's coincidence, of course, but it's not surprising, I guess. Like, and I feel like I don't know how, but the big all kind of like it's every
Yeah,
time he comes up, I feel like it's bases loaded and 2 outs, and it's just like, oh, like Austin
totally.
Barnes is coming out, and sometimes. To his credit, he's come through a couple times. Most of the time, he doesn't, as we expect. But I guess that just tells us we got to start betting unders whenever Austin Barnes is in there. Some of it could also have to do with his skills behind the plate, his pitch framing and all that stuff. The Dodgers are obviously keeping other
Yeah.
teams off the scoreboards too when he's in there. So but yeah, I got to start betting unders whenever Barnes
Well,
starts.
that's my favorite stat because if you give that to a Barnes defender, they're like, yeah, look how good he is at pitch framing and
Yeah.
game calling. It's pitching. It's a pitcher's duel every time he's in there. And then someone like me is like, or it could be his 580 OPS that he's got on the season. One of the two. One of the two. Obviously, every time Kershaw's on the mound, Barnes is catching. So there's something there.
Right.
But and to be perfectly transparent, the Dodgers are hitting the under at about 2/3 of the time. So the Dodgers are going under regardless of who is starting most of the time. So something to keep an eye on there. Okay, moving on to series preview. The Dodgers got 6 games this week with an off day on Wednesday. They start Monday night up here in my beloved Pacific Northwest playing the Mariners. The Mariners, for those unfamiliar, are 10-6, currently first place in the AL West, tied for the best record in the American League. They've won 7 of their last 9 against the Twins, Orioles, and Astros, although the Astros are missing about 85% of their roster due to COVID stuff, it seems like. Offensively, Mitch Haniger's their best player, 4 home runs, a 338 average. Pitching-wise, it's not great. The Dodgers are going to see Sheffield and Marco Gonzalez this weekend. Sheffield has an ERA of 4.91 in 2 starts. Gonzalez an 8.22 ERA in 3 starts. Tonight's interesting. If you want to bet on this game, the Dodgers are minus 200 to win. So just for context, that basically means if you were to bet the money line and it was about 200, the Dodgers would need to win 2 out of 3. If the Dodgers won 2 out of 3, you would break even. So you would need to go 3 for 3 on the money line in order to make money. The over-under is 8.5 tonight. As I look at this series, Dodgers coming off a big series against the Padres. They've got to travel literally from the southernmost point on the West Coast to basically the northernmost point on the West Coast. I think they have a big advantage pitching-wise. I'm not sure with the lack of rest maybe that they're going to have, whether I would go with the minus 200. If you want to bet the spread, it's minus 1.5 for the Dodgers, meaning they got to win by more than 2 or more. If that's a minus 125, so bet $125 to win 100. I would probably lean that way and lean under 8.5. Daniel, as you look at the Mariners tonight and tomorrow, anything jump out to you in this matchup?
I think what jumps out to me is just how well the Mariners are playing. Like, I don't think anyone expected them to really compete this year. Like, they're a young, rebuilding team. But to this point, 10-6, that's a really good record. They're playing some good baseball. They've had a few walk-off wins. So yeah, I think it's going to be a closer series than maybe people thought, like coming in. Like everyone sees the Mariners and expect, oh, there's 2 wins right there. But who knows? They're playing good baseball. So I will say it's good that the Dodgers will have the DH for a couple days. I think Dave Roberts said Justin Turner will DH one of the games. It's always good to get him off his feet. He's just been absolutely mashing. So it's nice that he could stay in the lineup and not have to play third for a game. Dave Roberts also said that Max Muncy will probably get a day off in one of these 2 games, which I think it's about time. He's the only guy on the team that started and played every single game this season. And huge credit to him. That's awesome to see. And he's just been mashing at the plate. But yeah, I think it should be 2 fun games. It's the Seager Bowl, as we all know, and Kyle Seager's, he's off to a good start. He's hitting well. So I guess we'll see which Seager gets the better this time around. I'm pretty sure when they played the Mariners last year, they both there's a game where they both homered, so that was pretty fun. But yeah, it should be a good 2-game series. We got Dustin Mays going tonight. He's off to a great start this season, so hopefully he could keep that going. I think he's coming off not his best outing. I think he only lasted like 4 1/3 or 4 2/3 his last time out. So hopefully he could get deeper into the game. Like you mentioned, the bullpen's a little taxed, so could use a little length there. And then Julio tomorrow, and then after that an off day, and then 4 more with the Padres. So hopefully we could keep things rolling. Dodgers are playing great baseball to start the season. Yeah.
Yeah, well, the DH is an interesting point, something I hadn't thought of. All I'm going to say is if Austin Barnes is the designated hitter again, we're going to riot, okay? So, like, now is the time.
Yeah.
You want to get Austin Barnes a random non-Kershaw start, pick one of the two. Just pick one of the DH
Yeah.
days, get Austin Barnes in there, let Will Smith
And
DH.
hey, yeah, exactly. Let Will Smith DH a
So,
game.
yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, like you said, May versus Sheffield, Urias versus Gonzalez, massive advantage to the Dodger in both of those pitching matchups. I think Dodgers are better offensively. So, again, Dodgers going under about 2/3 of the time. 8.5 is a big number for tonight's game. I kind of like that one just because Dodgers coming off, a break. Now, of course, the DH is going to bump that up a little bit. So, with the Padres, you saw numbers around 7, 7.5, 8. The reason it's higher is because, yeah, you're getting the DH there as well. So, that's what I like. Dodgers -1.5, and then maybe the under 8.5. And then you got a quick turnaround, 110 game on Tuesday, and then an off day. So kind of a nice break for the Dodgers. They fly home Tuesday, not get home at a crazy late night, crazy late time, all day Wednesday off, and then they get ready for a 4-day series against the Padres, which is where we go next. If I'm looking at Dodgers, I assume we're going to get Buehler, Kershaw, Bauer, and May as probably the 4 starters.
Yeah.
And then on the Padres side, some combination of whoever's going to take Weather's spot probably pitches Thursday. Darvish on Friday.
It could be Lamet is on his way back, so we could see him in one of those games as well.
Okay. Yeah, and some combination. They'll probably get Musgrove and Paddock the way that it lines up at the end of the weekend, and then some combination of I don't know who's going to. The Padres do have to play on Wednesday, so I'm not great at trying to figure out who would be due up on Wednesday. Maybe that would be Weathers' spot, I guess. Weathers' spot
Yeah,
would be.
it would be.
So then you're probably getting Darvish, Snell, Musgrove, and Paddock as the 4 for the Padres. So Musgrove and Paddock, 2 guys we haven't seen yet. I know you're a big Chris Paddock fan, so that'll be an exciting one.
Oh yeah, huge
for you. I mean, anything.
I will say if Paddock's throwing Sunday, I'm going to that game, so that should be fun to watch. Dodgers probably going to be taking BP off Paddock there, but yeah, that should be another good series. That Sunday game. That's the first time I'll be at Dodger Stadium since 2019 or whenever the last time fans were there. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, 7:10 start on Thursday and Friday, 6:10 on Saturday, and then 4:00 Sunday night baseball on Sunday. All these games obviously in Dodger Stadium, as you said. I believe the plan is for you and I to be live on Thursday night. I can't remember if we have scheduled Thursday night or Friday night.
Yeah, it's
Thursday night. So Daniel and I will be live post game. Hopefully that's not a 12:15er. We'll see how that one goes. But I mean, obviously,
actually, I think it's Friday night. Actually,
okay.
Because I'm pretty sure the Lakers play Thursday, which is a conflict for me. So Friday night.
So Friday night. Check. We'll keep you updated on that. It's either
we'll
Thursday or Friday.
know.
But obviously they just played. I mean, anything jumping out at you? Obviously, it's potential for Gavin Lux to be back in time for this series. It doesn't sound like Cody Bellinger, who it was announced had a hairline fracture in his leg. Robert said that didn't change the previous time frame, which I believe was like 2-ish weeks was the previous timeline.
Yeah.
So that would stay. He's still about a week and a half away from rejoining. But I mean, obviously, we just saw this team. Does anything change, or is it just going to be more of the same for 4 games?
Yeah, I think it's going to be more of the same. I'm expecting, some good pitching again. You mentioned both teams will have, all their big dogs again. But yeah, I think 4 games, we're getting an extra game in there. So that's some added fun there. But yeah, I think it'll be another close contested series. Hopefully the Dodgers come away with at least 3 wins there and, keep building their division lead. So hopefully by the All-Star break, this division's wrapped up. I'm not expecting that, but that'd be nice.
Yeah. And just looking at ESPN, just to give you a sense of the matchups, they are shuffled a little bit. So they've got Thursday projected as Buehler versus Darvish. Friday is Kershaw versus Snell. Saturday is Bauer versus Musgrove, and Sunday is May versus Paddock. So some intriguing matchups there. I think May versus Paddock, a couple of the younger guys, probably 2 of the guys that who the Padres think is one of their top young prospects versus the guy the Dodgers think is one of their top young prospects. And then obviously you just get Darvish, Snell, and Musgrove matched up with Buehler, Kershaw, and Bauer. You can't complain about that. So for you, successful week for the Dodgers. They've got 2 games against the Mariners. They're going to be heavy favorites in both of those. 4 games against the Padres. If they go 4-2 this week, is that success for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime you're winning more than you lose, that's something to be proud about. Ideally, you take both of the games against the Mariners and then 3 out of 4 from the Padres and go 5-1. But I'm not going to be mad if they go 4-2 by any means.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think as long as you can go 3-3 or 4-2, you're not going to complain. Worse than that would be a little bit disappointing, especially if it comes in the Padres series as well. So, yeah, a fun week. I mean, a great week. Obviously, it's fun when you get to interleague stuff. You get to play a team like the Mariners. You rarely get to play. I know most people in LA probably could care less. As a guy who lives in Oregon, I'm surrounded by Mariner fans, so this will be a fun one. And then 4 with the Padres. I did just get a text the Dodgers posted. Vin Scully got a World Series ring. So shout out to the Dodgers for getting Vin Scully a World Series ring. He deserves it. He deserves it. You know, all the people complaining about David Price not doing anything. Where are you at on the Vin Scully train? Okay, he deserves it. No complaints there. So good for the Dodgers on that one. So yeah, well, we appreciate you joining us. That's what we've got for today. It's going to be a good week of baseball. And we'll be back with you throughout the week. Obviously, we'll be doing some short, quick ones throughout the week. Thursday, Rob and I will be back doing a betting preview of the series against the Padres, looking at some of those matchups, how guys fare, righty versus lefty, day game, night game, that kind of stuff, giving you some advice when it comes to totals and over-unders and spreads and that type of thing. And then Daniel and I will be doing a live post-game as well at some point in the Thursday, Friday night range as well. So we appreciate you joining us. As always, check out DodgerBlue.com for the latest news and updates. DodgerBlue1958 anywhere on social media. If you're not already, we would love if you would subscribe and ring the notification bell here on our YouTube channel. That helps us out and allows you to get all the information we've got as soon as we've got it. So we appreciate you joining us. As always, we'll leave with the wise words of the man who just got a World Series ring himself, Vin Scully.
The best team holding a trophy high in the air. The Los Angeles Dodgers, champions of the baseball world.